to watch it over and over at your leisure. All right. All right, here we go. IRE essay writing. So yes, you should probably take notes but that document I just gave you is kind of your notes. First of all, I want you to consider that the writing process, I'm going to show you this before. The writing process, think of it like, I'm sure a lot of you have this feeling, I know I do. Sometimes you feel like a cat in a box, not sure how to get out. You scratch at the sides, and just when you've given up, you kind of rest against the side and fall out the exit. And then sometimes you end up in another box, right? So this is what we call in literature an analogy. So I want to give you, basically this format is giving you the directions. It's telling you where that little door is in the box, all right, so to speak. So we're not going to talk about introductions today. We're talking about the body paragraph, all right? So this is what you have as that document, the IRE overview. There's 3 parts to every body paragraph that you're going to write for this essay. Basically, you're introducing a quote, you're reproducing that quote, and then you're explaining that quote. Should sound familiar. It's kind of what you do every quote, right? You introduce the quote, you quote it, and then you explain it. So this is like, think of this as one giant version of that. So let's look at the first part, introducing a quote. Would someone like to read this for us? Thank you.
Introducing the quote includes both identifying the issue, the effect that the reader needs to quote from, and giving the context of the quote, which answers the question that someone unfamiliar with the work might be about the original sentence of the quote. For example, where is the quote from? What is going on in the quote as the quote begins? Who is speaking to whom, or what to pronouns and pronouns.
Yeah, like if you say he, like who is that referring to? So this should sound familiar, right? What do you usually do in the beginning of a body paragraph? What's that first sentence called usually? The topic sentence, right? And what do you do in the topic sentence? You explain the topic. Yeah, you introduce the topic, right? Which should connect to the thesis, right? And what else? What's the other thing you're doing in a topic sentence, or like right before a quote usually? You want to tell us like the main idea, like the topic.
Gonna be about.
Setting stuff, right? Contextual. If I tell you like the main idea in this scene is about perception, and then I just give you a quote from Hermia. If you don't know it's Hermia, if you don't know where it is in the scene, aren't you gonna be kind of confused? So everyone should have in their first 1 to 3 sentences before the quote, you should introduce 2 things. The issue, which is our new term for our main idea, our topic, as Michael said. And then the context. What's going on in the scene? If you suddenly say that like the hunter, you quote the hunter, or the part where he hacks a ravine in the thigh, we're gonna be wondering whose thigh is he hacking into, and who's this guy, right? So you want to introduce that context stuff. Yeah, Lily.
For each paragraph, do you want a different topic? Like, I know we're gonna have different quotes.
Yes. Yeah, and each topic again should relate to the thesis.
How long?
Great question. We're going to talk about that right now with the reproducing. Does everyone get that first one? And I will now, after we look over this sheet, I'm going to take you through that model paragraph we just read, that Chase read. I'm going to take you through that and show you how this relates. So let's look at, we've introduced the quote now, and the second part is reproducing the quote. In other words, how do you quote the quote? Someone like to read this for us? 9 times out of 10 in this essay, by the way, you're going to use this here, the colon, to introduce the quote. All right, so Sylvia, you want to read this reproduce part?
Yeah. Reproduce the quote according to the
parenthetical
citation format.
That's this thing, right?
Indent the quote if it is more than 4 text lines in length, but do not use quotation marks.
Okay, so let's stop there. Yes, I want you to do, like, the majority of your quotes, at least 2 out of 3 of your big quotes, should be what we call block quotes, and you should be indenting them. This is structured here to look like the way it would look on your essay. So the whole thing should be indented, and this is if it's actually you should write this down. I would say the rule is 4 or more lines. So if you ever quote something that's 4 or more lines,
You might indent that.
Yeah, I
this space here.
So your paragraph is.
So your body paragraph would start here, and then the quote is indented, and then the rest of your paragraph is not.
Okay.
Oh, if you have a huge block.
Yeah, huge block quote, exactly.
So basically, like the whole section you're talking about. What do you
Mhm.
feel like leading up to it, like blah blah blah, and then you put a comma or something, then would it still be indented?
Yes, if it's
Or just entered?
if it's a big quote. Now, but for a big quote, what you want to do is probably if it is a big quote, you don't want to lead into it so casually with a comma. You probably want to set it up like this with a colon. Okay. So
it's a big quote, like it's like 4 or more.
yeah, 4 lines or more.
So when you say the type line, it's how the lines appear in the column, right? Or
Yes.
okay.
Yes. Okay. And if you're quoting prose, like just a novel or something, 4 lines or more of the text. So do you want to keep
Oh yeah.
reading that part?
Um,
So the more than 4 lines or more, but do not use quotation marks.
unless they're using the original. Indent 3 more spaces, only the first line of paragraphs if you quote from more than one paragraph from the original text. In general, your quotes should not be too long. However,
Yeah.
you may need to summarize more of the text in your introduction. Only put the most important parts in your reproduction.
Mm.
If you have a long quote, the citation follows the end punctuation of the last sentence.
Great, thank you. And notice a couple things here. Notice in this block quotes, what's missing that we usually put with quotes?
Page numbers.
Page numbers.
No,
Quotation marks, right? We don't want them. So no quotation marks for block quotes. Which seems weird, but why would you not need them? In this case.
It's already indented.
Yes, there's already some sort of signal that this is a quote. Second, the page number is there, so yes, you do want the page number still. You still want the period. But with a long quote, let's say I'm quoting all of part 4 of The Bear. That's a lot of words. I want you to make sure that you only use the most important parts, which means what should you also be using with these block quotes? If you can, the dot thing, very good. The ellipses, great. All right, you got it.
How are we supposed to look at the page number thing? Because obviously the bear doesn't have page numbers.
Yeah, right.
Just
With the
sections
poem,
or-
what do we do with the poem? It'd be the lines
I think they have it on the side.
and yeah, that's good for this poem.
Just lines.
Usually the lines. Yeah,
Like
we can leave it at that.
For each stanza or for the whole entire poem?
For the whole entire poem. Or you can do it this way. You can say part 4, line 2. So like the line 2 of part 4. So in that case, we would do this. This is kind of like, does anyone remember like Midsummer Night's Dream you do? If it's part 4, line 2, just 4.2.
Wait, but if it's more than one line, you put like from.
Yep. 4.2 to 4. I have to calibrate my board. Okay. All right, Sylvia, you got 2 more things, 2 more rules here to read for quoting.
Okay. If the quote is shorter, use quotation marks, but do not indent.
Okay.
Next,
We've
place
done it.
the sentence period after the page number citation list.
Great.
Wait, is it
And we've done this before, right? So you should be familiar with that.
Is it 4 lines like on the poem or like on the Microsoft Word?
There's difference of opinions there, but I would say on Microsoft Word
Okay.
if it's 4 lines or more. Good question. Did everyone hear that? But that's kind of a style choice, so I leave it up to people on how they want to do that. Oh, what do you also, if you quote a poem and there's multiple lines, what do you need to do in your quotes? If it's
Slashes when basically
right. So this is one line. This is a second line on a poem. You put a slash. Indicate line breaks.
If you're in this thing, can you just format it like a poem and not use line breaks, or do you always have to use line breaks?
Oh yeah, that's what.
Yeah, you still want line breaks in this block quote.
So you still use the slashes?
Okay. All right. So those are actually the two easier parts. Those are the parts that actually are a smaller part of the paragraph. The big part of your body paragraph is your explanation. So can someone else read this explanation?
Explaining the quote means first identifying the important words, phrases, or parts of the quote that support your point, and second, explaining how they relate to the thesis. You must detail how this evidence supports your point. We quote the important words and terms and then demonstrate why these terms are so important. Your causes, or the important parts of the quote, have certain effects. Explain in as much detail as you are able. The explanation.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Well, yeah, you can read that last part.
The explanation is not intended because it is not a new paragraph, or indented, sorry.
Yeah.
The whole IRE generally takes an entire paragraph. It becomes the outline for your body paragraph.
Okay. So you're not going to be doing this like 2 or 3 times in a paragraph. This is your whole body paragraph. And this last part's the most important. It's the longest. If you notice, there's a couple things you're doing here. One, you are re-quoting the text. So you're literally going to take pieces of this quote and re-quote them. A lot of you did this on your quote IDs in the exam. You took the quote, and as you're explaining the quote, you re-quoted it. So I think you guys are really sort of ready for that. The other thing is, with each quote, you're always doing 2 things. You're basically showing us what's the strategy or technique the author's using. In other words, what's the cause and what's the effect. If Cannell is using a metaphor, you're quoting the metaphor, you're saying it's a metaphor, and then you're saying what's the effect of that metaphor. Okay? Here's an example. The paragraph we just read. There's the thesis. Here's that same paragraph that Chase read. Now, let's take a look. So, as he begins to recount, this is the beginning, remember? As he begins to recount his anecdote, the narrator is separated from his old model of the universe, a model which includes the human superiority over the animal world, which is spoken by Genesis. And then you got your quotes, which means we've already done 2 things before the quote. Anybody remember without looking at their document?
We've already introduced.
And what do we need in our topic sentence?
Setting.
What's that called?
Context.
The context.
You set the scene for the quote. You said it was saying.
The scenario is the context, the setting. So we're just going to call that context. And then one other thing, what else do you need in your topic sentence usually? You got to tell the audience.
How it relates to the thesis.
Yeah, what's your main idea? All right, here's the context. Look how quick this is. As he begins to recount his anecdote, basically, in the universe itself was laughing as he begins to tell a story. That's your context. Here's the second part, the issue. The narrator is separated from his old model of the universe. So now we're talking about, deep stuff here. Right? There's even a mention of Genesis. Here's the quotes. See that? Why do I not need to indent this quotes? It's not more than 4 lines, or 4 lines or more. And then look at all this. Look at the ratio here. This is all explanation, this last part. That's a lot of explanation, right? There's so much you can say about quotes. You now have so many things that we've gone over this year. Complexity, symbolism, metaphor, diction, connotation, all that stuff, right? Here's also, if you notice in the explanation, there's a couple times that we bring in the quotes into our explanation. Look here, Isley characterizes this vision as a miracle. Right? The fox is described as rank. Likewise, the author describes his formal model as upright. So I'm bringing in quotes. So why would it be important to quote words like miracle or rank? Yes, I know you gotta go in 2 minutes. Why would you want to quote those? It brings it back, it connects you back to the quote. But I could quote the fox was smelling, quote smelling. Why not quote smelling? Why is rank a great word to quote?
Because it describes what the smell is. It's kind of
It's what the author wanted you to.
Not just it proves my point, because it smells too, right? That proves my point.
Well, smell is vague. It sounds stupid, to be honest.
Yeah.
You want to just think it's powerful if you're quoting.
Great. What do you mean by powerful? What's in? Okay, so a word like rank has significance. What do we talk about when we talk about word choice that has lots of significance? Diction, connotation. So something I'm gonna repeat over and over until you're like, shut up already by Friday or Thursday, is requote good words that have great connotations. Okay. Oh, in the bear, you could just like close your eyes and just point to the text and you'll find it. It can be well, the word explains the theme, right, or connects to the theme.
But we have 2 days for that one because it seems like a lot. Like it seems like you do most of your research then and then you just detail it. So like.
I want you to give it your best shot and have a rough draft of an outline tonight. All right. Yeah. All right. Good luck. We'll talk about this tomorrow. We'll share. We'll discuss.
Mr. Secretary,